Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen. Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 36, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It is late Sunday night, March 13th, and I am in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. Every time I get a chance to wake up, thank God I got a chance to wake up. Jesus told me start again. Swipe left. Swipe left. A little bit of Sunday Morning by Lecrae to get us started this evening. Welcome into the shed, my babies. I am happy to be with you. We don't usually record shows on Sundays. Sunday is the Lord's day in my house. It's okay with me if it's not that day for you. Maybe it's a family day or a day of rest. But for me, it's the Lord's day in my house. And I don't usually get on Twitter very much. I don't usually record shows. But tonight is different because tonight happens to be one of my favorite days of the entire year. Along with April Fool's Day, America's birthday, Halloween, Mother's Day, because I love my mama, and my own birthday, today, Selection Sunday, happens to be one of my favorite days of the year. Because today we find out who the 68 teams are who made the NCAA college basketball tournament. March Madness is a couple days away from beginning. My absolute favorite sporting event of the year, and I could not be more excited. So I decided not to record an episode and have it out on Friday or Saturday like usual. That's our normal kind of schedule. We record on Wednesday or Thursdays. I edit the show, and then I put it out on Friday or Saturday. Not this week. This week I had to wait for tonight. And here's the thing. I have been working all day today. So unlike most Selection Sundays, I have no idea who is in the field of 68. Like, I have not seen a single bracket. I'm not going to see it for the first time until I break it down with you, my babies. We're going to look at it together. You can get out your bracket, print one off at home real quick, hit pause on this, And you can fill yours out with me. You can have the one sheet of integrity strategy, or you can fill out 10. But we're going to break it down together. I'm going to react live here on the show. I guess it's not that live. It's live right now, but you won't hear it for another day. But I'm going to get this episode out tomorrow on Monday so that you can hear it before the games begin. And I think that's a pretty good deal, my tools. I think that's a pretty good deal that you got going on here. You get this stuff for free. Speaking of, there are now a couple ways that you can support the show financially. Did you know that? This is a brand new information. We have not made a concerted effort yet, since we are only 36 episodes in, to have any advertising partners. And we doing this for free. We doing this for the love of the show, because we enjoy connecting with you and getting you the news in a different way. But it's not free to put on. The truth is we have to pay for some software. We have to pay for some equipment. And even the shed in which I am sitting right now, we are paying for that as well. Not quite have it paid off. So I wanted to give you, our listeners, y'all are so supportive and an awesome fan base. You do a great job of keeping up with the show. I want to give you an opportunity to support the show, and to do so in a way that's going to be fun, where you're not just giving money, but you can get something for your money. The first way to support the show is by subscribing to a Monday morning weekend recap email. This is an email that I will send out on Monday morning with exclusive content just for those who subscribe. It's going to include 5 worthwhile news articles that you may have missed, comments about the weekend's developments in the worlds of politics, sports, and the paranormal, results of the show's online polls, a snippet about what I'm up to, a preview of the upcoming episode, a book recommendation, an inspirational quote, and a sure-to-be-terrible dad joke. So for 4 weekend recap emails a month, the price will be $4. I think that's a pretty good deal for some exclusive content. That's $1 a week or $1 an email. It's literally one less Starbucks run a month. And I'm looking to start as soon as I can. I want to get at least 5 of you guys, 5 of you tools, to subscribe to this email, this Monday morning email list update. Once we have 5 people, we'll roll with it. If we don't get 5, we will take that idea behind the shed and shoot it. But I'm hoping you'll subscribe. To do so, just send an email to the show. Email us at intheshedwithwes. That's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to connect with you, and I would love the support. $4 a month isn't a lot, but it sure would help our show, help us kind of cover some of the costs as we continue to work hard, spend a lot of time each week to put the show out to you. The other way that you can support the show financially is to download the Mercari app. I don't know if you know Mercari. It's one of these apps where you can buy and sell things. Download the Mercari app and search for us on the Mercari app at In the Shed. Our username is just In the Shed. So search for In the Shed. You'll see our picture, our logo for the show, and buy some of our stuff. It's not show merch. It's actually a lot of different household items and vintage things and collectibles and sports memorabilia. Quite an extensive autograph collection, including a signed baseball by Alex Trebek of Jeopardy fame, an autographed picture of Jane Goodall, some pretty interesting and weird items, and we're definitely flexible on price. We've got some cool artwork, some vintage t-shirts, some one-of-a-kind items that you won't find anywhere else. So those are the 2 ways that you can support the show financially. To go download the Mercari app, find our In the Shed account, and buy something. And look, if you send me a message and say I listened to the show, I'll give you a 10% discount. I'll work with you. Or to subscribe for our email list and get some exclusive content by emailing the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. All right, no time for comments and corrections tonight, so straight to emails we go. Our first email comes from Brian from Roswell, New Mexico. Very cool, Brian. I've been to Roswell, New Mexico. I saw didn't see the crash site, but I saw the museum there. on my way to the Grand Canyon. I had to stop at Roswell. I would love to go back. It was pretty dope. The wife doesn't see that as a vacation destination, Roswell, New Mexico. But anyway, Brian from Roswell, New Mexico writes, Wes, your Ukraine coverage was awful. How do you call yourself a journalist and not even mention Zelensky's government is corrupt, that Ukraine is full of Nazis, and that NATO started this whole thing? Well, Brian, I still think that Roswell, New Mexico is a lovely place. Also enjoy Albuquerque. Look, first of all, man, I do not call myself a journalist, okay? You guys, the listeners, have labeled me a journalist, and I have graciously accepted the label. We put out a poll on Twitter, and of the 7 people polled, like 5 said that I was a journalist. And me and Joshua Teasley, who has been on the show a couple times, we were the 2 no votes, actually. We both voted no, but you guys voted yes and said that I am a journalist. I graciously accept, but it was you guys who gave me that label. I just like to claim it because 5 people on the internet said so, and it must be true. I'm sorry that you feel that way about my Ukraine coverage. I tried to be fair and even-handed when reporting on it, just to give you the facts and where things stood at the moment. Got some good feedback on Twitter from my friend Kimmer. I appreciated that. She said that I had a good perspective. You do not think so. And to be honest with you, Brian, I just disagree with you. There are problems with Zelensky's government in Ukraine. It's not without flaws. You're right about that. There are some issues and some questions about corruption for sure, but that doesn't have to do with the war. Those are 2 separate things. Just because the government doesn't behave the way that it should or has some big money donors that are influencing things doesn't mean that a sovereign nation should be invaded and that children's hospitals and apartment buildings should be bombed. You're conflating 2 things that don't go together at all. Also, this whole Ukraine is full of Nazis. Okay, Putin. Look, there are apparently some neo-Nazi groups in the Ukraine. There are neo-Nazi groups in America. Should Canada or Mexico invade our country and start bombing our cities and trying to just destroy every building that people are living in and have people hiding in the subways? Get a hold of yourself. Putin did not invade the Ukraine to get rid of Nazis. That is called propaganda. And this whole thing that NATO started the war. Look, we did talk about that last week. We addressed it. It's true that NATO has expanded. It's true that they are closer to Russia as far as borders go than Putin is comfortable with. But look, this is not what that is about, okay? This is about Putin's aggression, about his desire to rebuild the USSR, and that's all it is. And he saw an opening to do so, and so far, nobody has stopped him. Nobody has stopped him. I don't think that President Zelensky is a perfect man. I've never claimed that the Ukrainian government is without flaw, but they don't deserve to be invaded. Okay. I do appreciate you listening to the show, Brian from Roswell. And I hope you listen to this. I hope you continue to listen to the show. That's one thing about our show is that we have different folks who listen to it. I actually got blocked on Twitter this week 3 times just because someone found out that a lot of Trump people follow me, because someone else found out that a lot of Biden and Harris voters follow me. That's one of my favorite things, is that I have people that chime in, that email the show, that listen to the show, that are from different perspectives. They see things completely differently. It lets me know that we might be doing something right on In the Shed with Wes. That we might be doing something in a way that Fox News and the MSNBC do not. So Brian, I hope that you will keep listening to the show. Terrence from Virginia writes, the story about Doveland, Wisconsin was very interesting. Probably completely made up, but still something I've never heard before. That's what keeps me coming back to your show. Hey, thank you very much, Terrence. Appreciate you listening to the show. Look, I agree with you. Probably it appears that the story of Doveland, Wisconsin is one that started on the internet. There was just an internet conspiracy that is a myth. Most likely so. It's still fun to think about. It's still worth mentioning. And like you said, it's something a lot of people had never heard of. I had just heard of it and thought, hey, this is perfect for the paranormal segment of our show. We're not going to censor and silence things just because they might be true. We're going to put them out there and we're going to say, hey, it doesn't appear that the facts match up with this, but it's an interesting thought. It's a fun thought experiment. And it's not without all possibility that something like this could happen. Thank you for listening to the show. And finally, Matt from Ohio writes, Wes, quit being a fraud. You gotta love when you get an email and it starts out this way. And the truth is, sometimes I get like 10 or 15 emails a week in between shows. Sometimes I get like 3 exactly. Sometimes it's 4 or 5. This week I only got 3. It was slim pickings in getting emails to read. I would love it if you would email the show. Email what you think about a story. Email what you like about the show. Email me about what I am failing at and how I can do better. Email me your paranormal experiences. Send me your thoughts on politics or sports in the shed with Wes at gmail.com. But anyway, Matt from Ohio says, Wes, quit being a fraud. The Phenomena song is from Darkness Radio. You can't just steal other shows' bits and claim them as your own. Jerk. That's how we ended the email. He really did take the time to write an email calling me a jerk. Hey, I still appreciate you listening to the show, Matt from Ohio. I got a family in Ohio. Shout out to my Aunt Gig. I got to spend some time on her roof when I was a child, and it was pretty fun. I love you, Aunt Gig. Matt is making reference to the song that we sing whenever an article has the word phenomena in it, and we hit him with the phenomena. Do 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 do. Phenomena. Do 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 do. Phenomena. Do 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 da 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 da. And look, Matt, I don't know if you just started listening to the show. You might need to go back and listen to some earlier episodes, but here's the deal. I've never claimed that is our bit, and I have no intention of stealing it. I actually do that because I am a huge fan of Dave and Tim over at Darkness Radio. If there was no Darkness Radio, there might not have ever been an In the Shed with Wes Anderson. I listened to their show for years. I always found that to be hilarious. And I actually do that as an homage to them. I don't know if they even have seen it, but I actually sent them a DM, just kind of asking permission, letting them know that I was doing that, letting them know that it was not intended as a copy and paste, but just as an homage, because I have so much respect for those guys. They are incredible radio personalities over in out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And they're doing their own thing now. Tim is still doing Darkness Radio. Dave is doing something called the Paranormal 60. But Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, those guys, in my mind, are legends. And I just do that as a shout out and as an Easter egg to them and to Darkness Radio. And I've done my best to let them know that. I've said that on the show multiple times. So I'm a lot of things, Matt from Ohio. But a jerk is not one of those things. You a jerk, I know. I can do the jerk now. But I am not a jerk. And that's the emails. If you have thoughts that you would like to share about politics, sports, or the paranormal, please email me. I would love to have more emails to choose from this next week. It takes like 60 seconds. Write your boy an email at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air, even if it's not positive. All right, enough of that. We've got a great show for you tonight. But before we get to the rest of the news in the world of politics, let's hit the headlines. Saudi Arabia conducts one of its largest mass executions in years, writes the Daily Wire. Russian missiles strike Ukrainian base near Polish border, reports the Wall Street Journal. Biden's Russia response is giving him a boost. Can he make it last, asks Newsweek. From Bloomberg, Ukraine update, Russia asking China for military aid, U.S. says. And finally, a U.S. reporter was shot dead while covering the war in Ukraine, and that is according to BuzzFeed News. Our first story in the world of politics, Jen Psaki laughs off questions about looking for a job at CNN or MSNBC. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Friday laughed off an unexpected question asking her to confirm that she was looking for a job at CNN or MSNBC. I have more than enough on my plate here, and so you can't get rid of me quite yet, Psaki quipped at the end of a 50-minute briefing focused mostly on Russia's invasion of the Ukraine and Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court. Psaki pointed at frequent sparring partner and Fox News correspondent Peter Doocy while adding, "Sorry, Peter, for you on that, and so I will see you all on Monday." The question asked by Simone Atiba of Today News Africa was in reference to a report by Puck News that the two cable news channels sent teams to D.C. this month to woo Psaki. Psaki said in May that she intends to depart as Biden's press secretary in 2022, explaining, "I think it's going to be time for someone else to have this job in a year from now, or about a year from now." The lack of an obvious successor may keep Psaki in her position for longer than anticipated. Several other recent White House press secretaries are currently cable news pundits. Former President Donald Trump's press secretary Kayleigh McEnany works at Fox News, as does George W. Bush's ex-press secretary Dana Perino. Trump's first press secretary, Sean Spicer, is a Newsmax TV host. MSNBC's decision to court Psaki potentially places her in a rivalry for a primetime slot against former Bush White House Communications Director Nicole Wallace, who has renounced her past as a Republican operative. So a news article came out that claimed that both CNN and MSNBC are attempting to woo Jen Psaki, President Biden's press secretary, who plans to retire later in the year, and that they want to put her in a primetime slot as an on-air talent. Presumably, MSNBC sees enough in Jen Psaki that they think that maybe she can replace Rachel Maddow, who has taken a step back. Maybe CNN is looking to slide her into a time slot vacated by disgraced former newsman Andrew Cuomo. But listen, to me, the reason why I thought this was worth sharing is because this is terribly inappropriate. This is terribly inappropriate for the sitting White House press secretary whose job it is to come before the press and answer questions representing the Biden administration and where they stand on the issues. And while holding that office, to meet with news organizations that are supposed to keep her in check and hold her accountable and ask tough questions, to meet with those organizations and talk about a multi-million-dollar contract in the near future. It's not a good look. It's irresponsible, and it highlights the corruption that exists between mainstream media and our politics. And I'm not just throwing Jen Psaki and President Biden under the bus, because it was no different when Donald Trump was in office. It was no different when Donald Trump was in office, because his press secretaries, they signed contracts so quickly after losing their job or moving on that it was clear that they were doing the same thing. They were doing the same thing. And Simone Sanders, that was working for Kamala Harris in her administration in the vice president's office, she's now working at one of these organizations. I don't recall whether it's MSNBC or CNN, but she even went further and flat out said that even as an on-air correspondent, that she would be defending the Biden-Harris administration. It doesn't get a lot more clear than that. Look, if Jen Psaki wants to work in television, that's her option. That's her prerogative. But she shouldn't be conducting interviews while on the job. It shouldn't happen under President Trump. It shouldn't happen under President Biden. It shouldn't happen under the next president. And we've got to work on untangling our news media from our politicians. The news media is supposed to be the watchdog of the politicians, okay? That's what we try to do here on In the Shed with Wes. We give it to you straight. When it's the Republicans that are falling short, we're going to tell you. And when it's the Democrats who are falling short, we're going to tell you. And when an administration acts in a certain way, we're going to give you the facts and let you make up your own mind and draw conclusions on your own. But this is inappropriate. I don't know. I kind of think that when somebody serves as press secretary for a president, that afterward there should be some type of cooling off period. There should be some type of hold before they're allowed to work as on-air personalities or correspondents with news stations. Maybe you disagree. Maybe I'm going too far and I'm just naive as to how the world works. But at least wait until that administration is no longer in power. That's what I would like to see. And look, Jen Psaki, she does a mostly good job of defending the president's agenda and representing him. You may not agree with her, you may not like her personally, but she does a mostly good job of at least swatting away the tough questions and defending President Biden and his administration. But personally, as far as a TV personality, I'm not sure what they see. I don't see her as a Rachel Maddow. I just don't see that charisma. But I'm not a TV executive, so maybe Jeff Zucker, before he left CNN, was like, hey, we need to hire Psaki. If nothing else, her name is fun to say. She has a cool name, Jen Psaki. But anyway, to me, this is inappropriate, and it's something that we need to keep an eye on. Our second story in the world of politics, controversial YouTube star Logan Paul said he's seriously considering running for president. Yeah. Controversial YouTube star Logan Paul has said he's seriously considering running for president in a future election. Paul, who is 24 years old, said in an episode of his Impulsive podcast posted February 15th that he thought he'd run when he turned 35, the minimum age required by Article 2 of the Constitution to be eligible. The Ohio-born YouTuber has more than 23 million subscribers and has been involved in several controversies across his career, including receiving widespread backlash for filming a purported dead body in Japan's so-called suicide forest in 2017. He subsequently apologized and pivoted to podcasting and boxing and has largely regained his following. During the podcast, Paul discussed potential plans to sue boxer Floyd Mayweather over a dispute regarding payment for a fight that took place in June 2021. Following a brief conversation about whether society benefits the rich, Paul said, I really do think I'm going to make a run for president when I'm 35. When asked by his manager, Jeff Levin, who appeared on the podcast, what his first policy would be, Paul replied, I don't know. I have to do more research, but I think I could do some seriously good stuff that is so necessary and in my head feels inevitable, but someone has to do it. Levin responded by saying he could see Paul becoming president, but that 35 would be too early to run. Impulsive co-host Mike Majelik then asked if Paul would consider choosing him as his running mate, but Paul turned him down, saying, no, because you can't run. The comments were largely met with a negative reaction on social media, with many comparing the announcement to Kanye West's 2020 presidential campaign, which became subject of ridicule and memes online. This is not the first time that Paul has claimed he will stand in for president. In 2019, Paul posted a clip on Twitter from Joe Rogan's podcast that discussed what Paul's future might look like. In the clip, comedian Tim Dillon can be heard saying, I will make Logan Paul president. He's a smart guy. He will run. YouTubers are going to have millions of dollars, millions of fans, and no skills when they're all 40. Paul responded by sharing the clip on Twitter with the caption, I'll do it. Most comments under the tweet appeared to assume Paul was making a joke, writing LOL or posting laughing emojis. Paul's younger brother and fellow YouTuber, Jake Paul, also claimed that he and Logan had plans to run for president in 2032 when Logan would be 37 in an interview with sports YouTube channel Overtime in July 2021. He said, "We're still figuring it out. I might be president, he might. I think we're going to flip a coin and see who gets to be president versus vice president." At the time, Jake's claim did not appear to be taken seriously. One top comment with 150 likes said, "Fate of America relies on a coin flip," with the laughing emoji, while another said, "Jake is such a troll, it's so funny." So, I gotta say, I wouldn't be so sure that Jake Paul is trolling. I'm just saying, I wouldn't be so sure that Jake Paul is trolling. He's gonna run out of things to do. He's already been a successful YouTuber. He's had professional boxing matches or what are purported professional boxing matches. He's hosted a successful podcast. The man has made millions of dollars and has tens of millions of followers, most of whom, or a lot of whom anyway, are not yet of voting age, but will be by the time that he's able to run for office. And I gotta tell you, Logan Paul running for president, it's not a Kanye West type situation. This would be more comparable to Donald Trump to me, because I remember that day that Donald Trump came down the golden escalator. And I remember how my wife had been running errands, had been at the grocery store or something, and she got home and she was pregnant with our first child, with our daughter Layla at the time. And I said, "Honey, Donald Trump is running for president." And she said, she laughed and she said, the guy from The Apprentice, the billionaire Donald Trump, that guy? No, he's not. He's trolling. This isn't real. And I said, "Yes, it is. And he's going to win." And she was like, "There is no way that America elects Donald Trump, of all people, this TV personality and this business mogul with no experience. He's just kidding. He's getting publicity. He's not running." Look what happened. Look what happened. First of all, Kanye West didn't really run for president. Kanye wasn't on the ballot in all the states. He announced and got into the race far, far too late to be an actual candidate. But 10 years from now, you're telling me 10 years from now that Jake Paul, somebody with millions and millions of followers, with unlimited resources, with influence with young people who will be voters, that somebody like him could not run for president? Of course he could. Of course he could. And if you look at the trajectory of our country, in these elections, there's just plenty of people that look at the options and go, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to try something different. That's part of why Trump got elected, because people were sick of the same old, same old. Give us politicians that be in the game for their entire careers and haven't really helped the people out. Logan Paul made his mistakes early. And they were public and they were big, but he made them young. And he has time to become more mainstream and more of a legitimate and respected person when it comes to issues of politics or policy. And he has a lot of resources. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that he's going to be president of the United States one day. But I am saying, don't be so quick to label it as trolling or to write it off, because, hey, it could happen. We've kind of seen it happen once before. And television stars, they're not the celebrities of fame and of the same magnitude that they used to be. It's now podcasters. It's now YouTubers. It's now those on TikTok. It's the social media influencers. And there's going to come a time when those folks don't just have sway online, but when they turn their influence to things like public policy And if one of them decides to run for president 10, 15 years from now, I'm just saying, crazier things have happened. Our next story in the world of politics: beloved pet dog reunited with owner after 12 years on the run. A family's beloved pet dog that disappeared from their home more than 12 years ago has miraculously been returned. The toy fox terrier that disappeared from the family's South Florida home in 2007 was found on Friday. The little dog was 1,800 kilometers away in Pittsburgh when it was reunited with its owner. We in America, why are we measuring in kilometers? A, tell me how many miles away the dog was found, okay? I am an American patriot. When I go to Subway, what cheese do I request? American. I have a pair of swimming trunks with the flag on them, okay? I vote in every election, both state, federal, and local. Give me miles. I don't want to know 1,800 kilometers. What does a kilometer mean to me? Not a whole lot. Give me the miles. The terrier named Duchess, now 14, that's an old dog, was found hungry, shivering, and in serious need of a nail trim under a shed. Word. Under a shed. It was not this shed. This shed is in Alabama. The shed the dog was found under was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. According to Humane Animal Rescue, the dog had been sheltering under a house when the property owner took it to a shelter. Their staff located a microchip on the dog and traced Duchess back to its owners in Boca Raton, Florida. The dog's owner, Catherine Strange, drove from her home in Florida to Pittsburgh to collect the dog in an emotional reunion. That's a long drive for a dog. I think I would just say, well, find her a new home. It's been 12 years and we done moved on. We are now cat people, and Duchess can kick rocks. Y'all don't at me. Don't cancel me for that. I'm just making a joke about the dog, okay? I have a dog whose name is Susanna, and she's a rescue, and we love Susie, okay? Y'all don't at me. Mrs. Strange said she couldn't believe it when she got the call that her dog had been found after all these years. She said Duchess went missing back in 2007 after her son opened the door as he returned from school. The dog ran from the door of their home in Orlando, Florida, and the family didn't see her again. They were living near a very busy street, and Mrs. Strange assumed the dog was either hit by a car or scooped up by someone. After Duchess went missing, she checked shelters for her dog. She also continued to pay the annual fee of $22 to keep the dog's microchip up to date, changing it whenever she moved. They're like your babies. You don't give up hope, Miss Strange said at a news conference after reuniting with Duchess. As she kissed and hugged her long-lost pet, she murmured to the dog, "Where have you been?" I'll give you one guess as to this lady's race and ethnicity. I give you one guess, and you probably don't need any more guesses than that, because she said they are like your babies. No, they're not. With all due respect, I love my pets. They are a part of our family, but they are not like my babies because my babies are my babies. I value my children much more than I value my pets. As she kissed and hugged her long-lost pet, she murmured to the dog, "Where have you been, Duchess?" Well, she's been in Pittsburgh because apparently somebody in Orlando, Florida picked her up and took her 1,800 kilometers away, and I'm still not sure how many miles that is. Here's my theory, okay? I think that this entire news article is nothing more than propaganda. It's propaganda. It's propaganda for the microchipping organizations and companies, okay? It just happened to mention that they found their dog after 12 years. because this lady, Mrs. Strange, aka Mrs. Strange, continued even after the dog went missing to pay the $22 a year fee. So my theory is what is happening is when people's pets go missing, most people just stop paying that fee after like a year. And this company put out this article, these companies that have these microchips that sell them, they put out this article to be like, hey, if you keep paying the $22, maybe we will find your beloved pet, your fur baby. And I guarantee you it's about 2 million white people that done read this article. And they're like, hey, $22 a year is not bad. I'm going to microchip all my pets. I'm going to microchip my fish. I'm going to microchip my children, my spouse. I ain't losing nobody. But yeah, good for them, though. They found their dog. They found their dog, Duchess, after 12 years. And I know when my pets have gone missing, it is hard on the family, on the kids. It is a sad thing. I am glad they found a dog. And I do love dogs. I love animals. All of my animals. We got a couple cats and a dog. They're all animals that we have rescued, okay? We don't shop, we rescue. And we're big believers in that in this house. We give to such charities. I am saying these things tongue-in-cheek, and I beg you not to cancel me. But it was a white lady. I'm just saying it was. She was white. Our last story in the world of politics: Saudi Arabia UAE leaders reportedly declined calls with Biden amid Ukraine crisis. The de facto leaders of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates declined to arrange calls with President Joe Biden in recent weeks as the U.S. worked to contain a spike in oil prices driven by Russia's war on the Ukraine, the Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday. Citing U.S. and Middle Eastern officials, the journal reported that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the UAE's Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan both declined to request to speak to Biden amid dissatisfaction in both countries over U.S. policy in the region. There was some expectation of a phone call, but it didn't happen, a U.S. official told the journal, referring to the planned discussion between the Saudi Crown Prince and Biden. It was part of turning on the spigot of Saudi oil. Biden did, however, speak with the Crown Prince's father, King Salman, on February 9th, the journal reported. Officials said relations had grown strained between the U.S. and the two Persian Gulf nations over the Biden administration's lack of support for the war in Yemen and its revived negotiations on the Iran nuclear deal. Saudi officials reportedly also seek legal immunity for the Saudi Crown Prince, who faces multiple lawsuits in the U.S., including over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. The White House has looked to Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela for talks about increasing oil production to offset the effect of the Ukraine crisis on energy markets. Biden on Tuesday announced a ban on Russian oil imports, a major escalation of sanctions that will cause further price hikes for American consumers. Saudi and Emirati officials had earlier this month rejected calls to pump more oil, saying they would stick to a production agreement approved by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, an alliance that includes Russia. The Saudi Crown Prince and the UAE Sheikh Mohammed both participated in calls with Russian President Vladimir Putin last week. So, this is nothing short of humiliating for President Joe Biden and his administration. And I've heard and I've read some that say this isn't really a big deal, that it's just about profits for those two countries. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. Saudi Arabia and the UAE declined to have phone calls with the President of the United States of America. This is unprecedented territory, okay? This does not happen. It doesn't matter who the President of the United States is, what their policies are, what party they come from. They are one of the few people in the world that can pick up the phone and dial anybody and get them on the other line. And those two leaders were just like, nah. And yet, they both had phone calls with Vladimir Putin. Yo, this is not a good sign. It's not a good look for the Biden administration, but even more than that, for gas prices, for energy, for U.S. and foreign relations, this is not a good thing at all. And it kind of shows how they view our president. Did they see him and his leadership as weak? Did they know that they have a stranglehold on us between them and Russia when it comes to energy and when it comes to oil? That they can just ignore the president of the United States, not enter into calls with him, not negotiate with him, not talk to him. They can just ignore him. And if somebody tells you that this is not a big deal, maybe don't listen to that person, okay? It is a big deal. And look, the hard truth of it is that Saudi Arabia is not our friend. They're not our friend. They're listed as one of our allies in the Middle East. How are they our ally? Were they our ally when they killed Jamal Khashoggi? Were they our ally when so many of the 9/11 hijackers were connected not to Iraq, not to Afghanistan, but to the Saudis? Were they our ally then? Were they our allies when they continually try to draw us in and get us to support what they're doing in Yemen, which is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world? If you're not familiar with it, look up the blockade and what they're doing to Yemen. We should never be a part of that, but because of oil, because of the stranglehold we have, because they are our quote-unquote allies, we've been brought into some things that morally just don't come out in the wash. These are not our friends, the Saudis. They're opulent, egotistical, murderous regime. They don't give freedom to their people. And it's time for us to treat them as such. It's time for us to stop allowing these other countries to get over on us because they produce a lot of oil, because we import so much oil. I'd rather us all ride bicycles or go back to horse-drawn carriages than to allow these countries and these nations that have no business being in partnership with us rule over us and have their way with us, and then us just take it and call them allies. And I'm not talking about going to war. I'm not talking about doing things to hurt the environment. I'm simply talking about the relationships that we have and what we put up with from other countries. You won't even answer a call from our president. You are not our ally. And it's time to take the gloves off and stop pretending. President Biden has got a 5 to 6 point bump in his approval rating because of the way that he's handled this issue between Russia and the Ukraine and the crisis and the war there. And if you're being fair, I think you have to admit that overall, he's done some good things. He's made some good effort. But it's also time for him to lead from the front, not from behind. It's clear that Russia is going to bomb the cities of Ukraine until there's nothing left but rubble. And the sanctions aren't stopping it. And the UAE and Saudi Arabia are both talking to Putin but ignoring you, President Biden. And Russia is now asking for the help of China militarily, not just financially, but militarily, asking for China to support them and help them as we move a little bit closer to what? To war with Russia? To World War III? Look, I said on the episode last time that we don't need to be entering into a no-fly zone, that we don't need NATO boots on the ground in Ukraine, that we don't need to go to war with Russia, and I believe that. But it's time for President Biden to lead from the front. And he can start by ceasing to call countries that will deal with Vladimir Putin and Russia but not with us, to cease calling them our allies. Because they're not. And hey, I don't know that this is true, But it's worth a shot. If the sanctions aren't working in stalling Russia from continuing to bomb Ukraine and commit war crimes and atrocities there, what if all of the world leaders publicly mocked the president of Russia for his last name? Why have we not tried that? Like, let's go middle school on this man. His name is Vladimir Putin. On very serious news reports, these anchors with a straight face over and over say President Vladimir Putin. Maybe I'm more immature than those journalists, but I laughed out loud when one of them said, "How does Biden stop Putin?" I don't know, maybe some Gas X, maybe some Pepto. How does Biden stop Putin? Can we just mock the man for the fact that his last name is a fart? Let's just make fun of him. Let's all talk about how that's one of the worst names, one of the worst last names of any leader in world history. Let's go middle school on the man. Maybe that will solve this problem. I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's worth a shot. And if his middle initial starts with the letter B, all bets are off. Vladimir B. Putin. How does Biden stop Putin? That's all for the world of politics. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Vikings give quarterback Kirk Cousins an extension worth $35 million. Cowboys keep wide receiver Gallup with $62.5 million deal. Kevin Durant drops 53 points and tells Mayor to figure out the vaccine policy. Kevin Garnett buries rift with Ray Allen as Celtics retire number 5 jersey. Cardinals tight end Ertz agrees to new 3-year pact. And Thomas Edward Brady IV is returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for his 23rd season. Any other day of the year, we would be leading the sports section of our show with the fact that the greatest quarterback of all time has announced that he's coming back for another season. Or even the fact that Russell Wilson was traded to the Broncos. Or that Carson Wentz was traded. These are all big news stories in the world of sports. And we love to talk NFL on this show. But hey, it's Election Sunday, my babies. We find out for the very first time together right now who got put where in the NCAA tournament. What the matchups are. What 5 seed is going to be the 12. What 4 is going to be upset by a 13. How many of the 4 teams that we gave you here on In the Shed with Wes before the season even started made it to the tournament. And who they match up against. I haven't seen the bracket yet. I haven't seen where the teams are. We're about to see it together for the very first time. And I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this moment all day long. Let's go. Let's start out west where Gonzaga is the number 1 seed. They play 16 seed Georgia State. Gonzaga is 26-3 on the year. Georgia State is 18-10. I think that that's an easy win for Gonzaga there. They advance to the next round, where they will play the winner of a very interesting matchup between 8 seed Boise State and the 9 seed Memphis Tigers. This is a very interesting matchup to me for several reasons. For one thing, it's happening in Portland, Oregon, which is a whole lot closer to Boise, Idaho than it is to Memphis, Tennessee. Boise State is 27-7 on the year. Memphis is 21-10. And if you haven't had a chance to see Boise play, they play a very good defense. They are a tough-nosed, hard-nosed defensive team. And Memphis has had their struggles, but they've very quietly gotten healthy the last part of this year. And they've got a lot of talent on that team. They're the type of team that could make a run But will they beat Boise in this game? I'm going to say no. I'm going to go with Boise with the 8th seed. I'm going to say that they get a win and that they beat Penny Hardaway and the Memphis Tigers. Although I think that's one of those games that really could go either way. But I have Boise State. The 5-12 matchup here is between the Connecticut Huskies and New Mexico State. Connecticut is 23-9 on the year. New Mexico State is 26-6. And look, I think Connecticut is one of the more interesting teams in the entire tournament field. I haven't seen all 68 teams that made the field yet, but Connecticut, I've watched them play a few times this year. They have a lot of talent. They're a good team. They're the type of team that could really make a run or be terribly disappointing. I don't think that New Mexico State can match up with them. I think the UConn is going to score too many points. They have too much talent on the offensive side of the ball. I know that the 5-12 is an upset people look for every year. I don't think this is the one. I have UConn moving on. The 4-13 matchup is the Arkansas Razorbacks, one of the 4 teams that we gave you before the season ever started, against Vermont. Arkansas is 4-1 against top 25 teams. They have a record of 25-8, whereas Vermont has a record of 28-5. Both teams score about 75 points a game, but I think Arkansas is one of the more underrated teams in the country. They were disappointing in their performance in the SEC tournament, but they've been a very good team as of late. J.D. Note is one of the best players in all of college basketball. The guard that they have that can get his own shot, that creates for his teammates. And Jalen Williams inside is just a savvy player. Arkansas has a very good coach in Eric Musselman. They play great defense. Vermont is a fun story. I remember several years ago, they had that coach that was really, really witty and really funny. I can't remember his name. He was in his last season, and they made a run in the tournament, won a game or two, and they were a lot of fun to watch. They shot a lot of three-point shots. Look, I like Vermont. They're not beating Arkansas. If Arkansas loses to Vermont, I will be shocked. I have Arkansas winning that game. The 6-11 matchup features another SEC team, Alabama. Wow. Alabama at 19-13 overall. They got bounced in their first game in the SEC tournament by Vanderbilt, and they get a 6 seed. You've got to be kidding me. Wow. I'm shocked by that. I cannot believe Alabama got a 6 seed. I know they beat Gonzaga, they beat Houston, they beat Baylor, they beat Tennessee, they beat Arkansas. They have some really quality wins, but man, they lost 13 games. They are kind of a feast or famine type team. I was certain they would make the tournament, but I thought that they were a 9 seed. I did not think that at 19-13 they would be a 6. They are far too high for me. I know that I'm a War Eagle fan, but I'm shocked to see that. So Alabama is going to play in San Diego, California, against the winner of Rutgers and Notre Dame in the play-in game. And see, this is very interesting to me because I think that if Notre Dame wins the play-in game, that Alabama probably beats them. But if Rutgers wins the play-in game, I might lean towards picking Rutgers in an upset over Alabama. Alabama is just so unpredictable. They're so unreliable. They have a lot of talent. They have a coach that's well respected. They get up and down the floor. They shoot a lot of threes. But sometimes they fall asleep for 8 or 10 minutes on defense in a game. Sometimes they go cold, and they really go cold. They shoot themselves out of games. I do not trust Alabama in this tournament. They have enough talent. They're the type of team that could go on a run and make the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, or they could lose in the first round. And Rutgers, up until their loss in their conference tournament, they were on a run where I think they had won like 4 games in a row against ranked opponents. And I wish I knew who Alabama was playing, but for the purposes of tonight, I'm going to go, this is going to be my first upset. I'm going to say the 11, either Rutgers or Notre Dame, who I think will probably be Rutgers. I think that the 11 gets the win over 6-seed Alabama, and I think that Nate Oates and company go out in the first round. The 3-14 matchup puts Texas Tech against the Montana State Bobcats. Texas Tech is 25-9 on the year. Montana State is 27-7. Montana State scores 77 points a game, but they haven't played a single top 25 team. And Texas Tech only gives up 60 points a game. Their defense is unbelievable. Sometimes they're feast or famine on offense, but I just have a hard time believing that Montana State can win this game. I'm going Texas Tech. The 7-10 matchup puts Michigan State against Davidson. And I got to tell you, this is where I start to make picks with my heart instead of my head. People always pick the 12 over the 5 or the 13 over the 4. The ones that I always pick, for some reason, I don't know, it's always been this way for me. The 10s are so attractive. The 10 seeds look so attractive against the 7 seeds in mild upsets. And this is one that looks good to me also. Davidson is 27-6 on the year. Michigan State is 22-12. They've been up and down all season. And Davidson can really score the basketball. They're 1-0 against ranked teams. They beat Alabama by a point. They beat a good St. Louis team twice. They went 15-3 in their conference. They put up a lot of points. And I might be way off base here. But I'm gonna go with my heart, and I'm gonna call the upset. And I'm gonna say Davidson, the 10 seed, knocks out Tom Izzo at Michigan State in the first round. The next matchup is a 2 seed in Duke and Coach K's Courteney Cox versus the 15 seed Cal State Fullerton. Let's keep it real simple. Duke wins this game. They move on. It's not close. So in the West, at least in the first round, I really don't have very many upsets. I have Gonzaga and Boise moving on, UConn and Arkansas. Do have Rutgers or Notre Dame upsetting Alabama, Texas Tech moving on, Davidson upsetting Michigan State, and Duke beating Cal State Fullerton. Moving on to the East bracket, the 1 seed there is the Baylor Bears. And I'm actually kind of surprised to see Baylor get a 1 seed in the tournament. I kind of thought that they had played themselves out of a 1 seed here later in the year. They've had a great season. They're 26-6 overall, defending national champions, but they didn't win their conference tournament, and they went 5-3 against top 25 teams. I really thought Baylor was a 2 seed. Make no mistake, they're a good basketball team, but I thought that they would be a 2 seed. And they played Norfolk State, who has had some success in recent years in tournaments and has won a couple of games even as a 14 seed one year. They're 24-6 on the year, and they have less than a 1% chance to win this game in my estimation. Baylor advances. The 8-9 matchup in the East is 8 seed North Carolina against 9 seed Marquette. North Carolina is 24-9. Marquette is 19-12 on the year. And North Carolina is a team much like Alabama. They can be up and down. They're kind of hard to predict. They are feast or famine. On the one hand, they split games with Duke. On the other hand, they lost to Kentucky by 29 and Tennessee by 17. Marquette is a team that gets up and down the court. They are one of the fastest teams in the country. They play with a lot of pace. And they score about 74 points a game. Not that high, but they just play so quick. This is a game... And, you know, to say that an 8 and 9 could go either way is kind of common sense. It's an 8 versus a 9. But this truly is another one that really could go either way. I'm going to say North Carolina, the good version, shows up and they win a first-round game against Marquette, that they advance to the next round. The 5-12 here in the East is very interesting. The 5 seed, St. Mary's. St. Mary's out of the West Coast Conference got a 5 seed. They're 25-7 overall, and they're a good basketball team. I've seen them play. They beat Gonzaga once this year. They lost to Wisconsin by 6. They're a good team, and they're going to play the winner of Wyoming and Indiana. That's an incredibly interesting game if you're a basketball fan. Wyoming, to me, is one of the teams to watch before I knew who they would play or where they would be seated. But look, Indiana is playing good basketball right now. And you have to give props to Mike Woodson and what he's done in his first year in Indiana. Indiana is a tough team, and they've really improved as of late. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch, Indiana and Wyoming. And I'm going to go with a 12-5 upset. I think that whether Wyoming prevails or Indiana prevails, I think that the winner of that game can upset St. Mary's, who plays a good team but who plays in a weak conference. And I have the 12 seed advancing there. The 4-13 matchup in the East puts the UCLA Bruins against Akron. UCLA is 25-7 on the year. Akron is 24-9. And here's the thing. UCLA has 2 of their best players back from a Final Four run in last year's tournament. And it's a little disappointing that they're a 4 seed. I kind of thought that they would be on the 3 line. They've kind of been up or down also, but have been a top 10 team all year. And they have a lot of potential. And if you're looking for a team, 4 seed or higher, that could really make a run, UCLA, depending on matchups, would be a good candidate. They're playing Akron, and look, Akron plays good defense. They're a good team at 24-9. It's not impossible for them to pull the upset here, but the reason why I'm going to go with UCLA is because I don't think Akron would have even made this tournament had they not played a team in Kent State that had like 4 players suspended for the conference championship game. Kent State, I think, was the better team in that conference, but they made a rap video in the locker room cursing Akron, and players got suspended. I think UCLA moves on. The 6-11 matchup in the East is the Texas Longhorns at 21-11 versus the Virginia Tech Hokies at 23-12. This is a tough game to call for me. They're playing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which doesn't really do much for either team or fan base. Texas at a 6 to me is overrated and ranked too high. But Virginia Tech is 23-12 in a conference in the ACC that was really down this year. Their rankings are almost identical in the BPI. Texas went 3-8 against top 25 teams this year. Virginia Tech went 2-3, and this game could really go either way. I'm going to go with Texas on a whim, but I would not be surprised if Virginia Tech won that game. The next matchup is number 3 seed Purdue versus number 14 seed Yale, who won an absolute barn burner against Princeton for the Ivy League championship. Purdue is 27-7 on the year. Yale is 19-11. They both, fun fact, they both average exactly, giving up 68.8 points to the other team. Exactly. Purdue does have a lot more talent than Yale. But Ivy League teams can be hard to prepare for, especially in a tournament. And to be honest, I just never really trust a Matt Painter coach Purdue team. This may not even be correct statistically, but it always seems to me like they underperform in the tournament. They have a lot of talent, and I'm probably wrong, but for some reason, as I'm looking at this for the very first time ever on the show, I just feel like a 14-3 in Yale beating Purdue is a distinct possibility, and I'm going to go with the Yale Bulldogs. I'm going to put them into the next round. The 7-10 matchup in the East is very exciting to me. This shows how much of a college basketball nerd I am. The 7-seed Murray State against the 10-seed San Francisco. These are two teams that I have watched multiple times this year, and they're two very good teams. They're actually two teams I made a list because I am a list maker, and I made a list earlier today of teams that if they made the field that I was expecting big things from and that would possibly pick as upset teams, and both Murray State and San Francisco were on that list. Murray State is 30-2 on the year. 30-2. One of those losses came against my Auburn Tigers in a game which they were leading, and Auburn came back and won by 13. San Francisco is 24-9, and I'm going to go with Murray State. I just think that Murray State has more top-tier talent than San Francisco, and I think they have more athleticism and speed. I think San Francisco is a good team and a fun team, but I think Murray State gets the win. And then the last matchup in the East, the 2-seed, my Kentucky Wildcats versus the 15-seed St. Peter's. First of all, Kentucky gets to play their first-round game in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I guarantee that it will be filled with Kentucky fans. St. Peter's mascot is the peacock, which is cool, I guess. But they don't have a chance in this game. They just don't. Kentucky's not losing to St. Peter's. The 2 and the 15, Kentucky's going to move on to the next round, and I would bet my house on that. But if St. Peter's wins, don't come for my house because you can't have it. It's just an expression, my babies. So again, in the East, I have Baylor moving on, North Carolina moving on. I have a 12-5 upset in the winner of Wyoming and Indiana beating St. Mary's. I have UCLA moving on, Texas beating Virginia Tech, Yale upsetting Purdue, Murray State beating San Francisco, and Kentucky beating St. Peter's. Moving on to the south end of the bracket, we have number 1 seed Arizona Wildcats against the winner of Wright State and Bryant. Look, Arizona is 31-3 on the year. Would love to see a 16 upset of 1. Bryant is a fun basketball team and a good story, but Arizona wins the game and moves on to the next round. The 8-9 matchup here puts Seton Hall Pirates against TCU and the Horned Frogs. Seton Hall is 21-10 on the year. TCU is 20-12. And this will be a defensive battle. Neither one of these teams necessarily score a whole lot of points. They both make their opponents earn their baskets. Neither one have a good record against top 25 teams. Seton Hall is 3-6 on the year. TCU is 5-6. I do think that TCU has played better top-tier competition, and I think that Jamie Dixon is a terrific basketball coach that's done amazing things with TCU. I'm going to go with the 9 seed and the Horned Frogs winning the matchup here. The 5-12 matchup in this region puts the Houston Cougars against the UAB Blazers. Houston is 29-5. UAB is 27-7, coached by former Ole Miss coach Andy Kennedy. And look, Houston made the Final Four last year. They're coached by Kelvin Sampson that was at Oklahoma for so long. They play very good defense. They're a talented team. Again, this is probably my heart over my head. Houston is a team that could go far in this tournament, but I'm going to go with the UAB Blazers. One of the teams from my home state. They've had a very good season. They get up and down the floor. They score a lot of points. And I'm just going to pick them in this matchup. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But they are 12, and I'm going to pick them over the Houston Cougars in what I will probably regret. The 4 versus 13 in this region is the Illinois Fighting Illini versus UT Chattanooga. Illinois is 22-9. Chattanooga is 27-7. Both teams score about 75 points a game, and Chattanooga only gives up 65 points a game. They play good defense. I just don't think that they have enough to match up with Illinois. I think Kofi Coburn and Frazier and some of the players that Illinois have are just going to be too much for Chattanooga, and I think Illinois moves on. The 6 versus 11, this is a very good matchup. I told y'all, I like 10s and 7s. I like 11 and 6s. And this is a very good matchup between the 6 seed Colorado State and the 11 seed Michigan Wolverines. Very interesting. Michigan and Juwan Howard get into the tournament at 17 and 14, and they get an 11 seed. Not a 13, not a 12, not a 14. They get an 11. And Colorado State gets a 6 seed at 25 and 5. I think maybe both of these teams are teams that folks will look at and say that maybe they're a little too highly rated. But it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. Colorado State is a team that has beaten Boise State twice. They beat St. Mary's by 16 points. They beat Wyoming. They beat Creighton by 14. And Michigan is a team that has largely underperformed. Juwan Howard has left a lot to be desired from the Michigan Wolverines this season. Michigan's one of those teams that the question is, will they be able to put it together in the tournament and play up to their potential, or will they go out with a whimper? And I'm going to say that they go out with a whimper, and I'm going to pick Colorado State. I just think that Colorado State is a more disciplined basketball team. I think that they've really shown their mettle in beating some of the teams, some of the better teams that they've faced. And I just think that with all the ups and downs that Michigan has had, even though they'll probably be the more talented team, to expect them to enter into the NCAA tournament and just put it all together, I think is asking too much. I'm going with Colorado State. The 3 versus the 14 in this region puts the Tennessee Volunteers against Long Beach. What up to Uncle Snoop over there in Long Beach? Long Beach is 26 and 6 on the year. Tennessee is 26 and 7, and fresh off an SEC tournament championship, beating Texas A&M earlier today by 15 points. Look, Tennessee at a 3. That's a 2 seed, maybe even a 1 seed. The way that they played in the SEC tournament. They absolutely smother you on defense. They got guys that can shoot the ball from the outside. Rick Barnes has built an incredible program there, picking up after the foundation laid by Bruce Pearl. And Tennessee can go a long way in this tournament. I really believe that. They're one of the teams out of the SEC, which has been the best conference this year in college basketball, that has a chance to make a Final Four run. And they're not going to lose to Long Beach. I got Tennessee in this one. The 7-10 matchup, this is a very interesting matchup. Number 7 seed Ohio State Buckeyes at 19 and 11 versus the 10 seed Loyola Chicago. Sister, what's her name? Y'all know who I'm talking about, the nun that love Loyola Chicago, that is like their team chaplain or something. Sister Mary Helen, what is her name? I cannot remember, but she's really cool lady. Loyola Chicago, what they've done making the Final Four under Porter Moser, who now moved on to Oklahoma, is incredible. And they played the same system that they did under Porter Moser. One of his former assistants is the head coach at Loyola. Look, Loyola's 25 and 7 on the year. They're a good basketball team. Like, this is a top 25 level basketball team. And both Ohio State and Loyola average exactly 73.8 points a game. Exactly 73.8 points a game. The difference is on the defensive end, because against Ohio State, opponents score 68.5 points a game. But against Loyola, they only score 61.7. Loyola is a good defensive team. The way that they run their offense with ball movement and back cuts is a beautiful thing. And I've already confessed to y'all, my fatal flaw in filling out brackets is picking 10s over 7s and going with my heart over my head. And I'm doing it again. I'll do it again, too. I'm picking the 10 seed Loyola Chicago to upset Ohio State and move on in the tournament. And then the 2 seed versus the 15 in this region puts Villanova against Delaware. And we won't even waste our time. No disrespect, Delaware, you had a great season. Villanova moves on. Now we move on to the Midwest bracket, where Kansas gets the 1 seed at 28-6 on the year. And it doesn't really matter which team they face. Kansas will move on. They will win. The 8-9 matchup in this region is the San Diego State Aztecs versus the Creighton Blue Jays. And Creighton has played a much tougher schedule than San Diego State, because Creighton is 5-6 against top 25 teams. They've played 11 top 25 matchups this year, and San Diego State has only played 4. Creighton averages slightly more points than San Diego State, but San Diego State gives up many fewer points than does Creighton. San Diego State is a good defensive team. They give up 57.7 points a game. Like, that's really good defense. I don't care what competition you're playing. San Diego State has beaten Colorado State twice. They beat St. Mary's by 10 points. They beat Wyoming by 7. Creighton has beaten Villanova. They've beaten UConn twice. They've split with Providence. This is a really good matchup between two very evenly matched teams. I'm going to go with the defense of San Diego State. I have them moving on and beating Creighton. The 5-12 matchup in the Midwest puts the Iowa Hawkeyes against the Richmond Spiders. Iowa's 26-9 on the year. Richmond is 23-12. And to put things bluntly, I just think Iowa has too much offense. I just don't think Richmond can hold Iowa to so few points so they can keep it competitive. I think Iowa pulls away as the game goes on. They win the 5-12 matchup. If you're looking for a 5-12 upset, I do not think that this is the one. The 4-13 matchup in the Midwest puts the 4-seed Providence Friars against the 13th-seed San Diego State Jackrabbits. Providence is one of those teams that I would put up there personally with Alabama and with North Carolina, a team that has a lot of talent, that's well coached, that really is capable of making a run, but also could lose in the very first round. And look, San Diego State is 30-4 on the year. They haven't really done very much losing. They average 87 points a game. They score a whole lot of points. And again, 10s over 7s, 11 over 6s, and 13s over 4. That's what I tend to pick. That's where my upsets come from. And I'm going to pull one here. And I'm going to say that the Jackrabbits, who have one of the coolest mascots in the world, I'm going to say that they upset Providence, that they bounce them in the first round, that they move on to play Iowa. The 6-11 matchup here in this region puts LSU Tigers against the Iowa State Cyclones. LSU, who's 22-11 on the year, but went 9-9 in a tough SEC, against Iowa State, who's 20-12, but went 7-11 in their conference. Look, LSU is a good basketball team, and they just fired their head coach in Will Wade amidst allegations of cheating. They have him on tape. It's not really an allegation when you are caught on tape. But LSU, I think, is a team that rather than fold, I think that they're going to rally. They just are athletic, and they play smothering defense. If they can score points on you, they will beat you. And they have the potential to make a run. I think that they're going to beat Iowa State and move on. The 3-14 matchup is the Wisconsin Badgers against Colgate. Yeah, against some toothpaste. No disrespect, Colgate. You're a wonderful institution of higher learning. Wisconsin is 24-7. Colgate is 23-11. Both teams play good defenses. Colgate actually averages 76 points a game, but I just don't think that they'll have the horses to keep up with Wisconsin. Colgate does not play a particularly tough schedule, and I just think that Wisconsin is a better team. I think that they move on in this matchup. The 7-10 matchup in the Midwest puts the 7-seed USC Trojans against the 10-seed Miami Hurricanes. And of all coaches in college basketball, one of my top 10 favorite coaches is Andy Enfield at USC. I love what he did when he was at Florida Gulf Coast, Dunk City or Lob City, whatever they were called a few years ago. And he's done a solid job at USC. USC is 26-7 on the year, although they're only 1-4 against top 25 teams. But they're not playing a top 25 team. They're playing Miami, who's 23-10, and who lost 6 games in their conference. I think USC wins this game and moves on to the next round. And the final matchup in the Midwest bracket is my second-seeded Auburn Tigers against the 15-seed Jacksonville State. This game is going to be played in Greenville, South Carolina. I believe the Auburn fans will travel. And look, Auburn had a fantastic year. They were ranked number 1 for 3 weeks, number 1 in the country, an Auburn basketball team that's never happened before. They're 27-5 on the year. They've had a great season. They peaked in January, and it's been consistently a struggle to win games away from home, especially ever since. No team in the last 15 or 20 years has lost in the quarterfinals of their conference tournament and then gone on to win the national championship. And Auburn's going to have an uphill battle. This is a team with Final Four potential, but they haven't showed it in over a month. They have one of the best players in the country in Jabari Smith. He's going to be the number 1 draft pick in the NBA. They have a terrific defensive center in Walker Kessler. But really the question is, can they score enough points? In their SEC tournament loss, they shot the ball putridly from three-point range. They've struggled to make three-point shots to shoot them confidently all season, and they go periods of time where they really have trouble scoring and where their guards dominate the basketball 35 feet from the hoop instead of running their offense through Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler, which makes zero sense to me. I trust Bruce Pearl. I trust the defense of Auburn. And I don't think that Auburn's going to lose to a 21-10 Jacksonville State team, although I worry about Auburn's ability to go far in this tournament with their current guard play. But I am picking them to win this game and to move on. So in the Midwest, I have Kansas moving on, San Diego State moving on, Iowa beating Richmond, South Dakota State upsetting Providence, LSU beating Iowa State, Wisconsin defeating Colgate, USC, and Auburn moving on as well. Moving on to the round of 32, I have Gonzaga versus Boise State in a 1-8 matchup. I've told you Boise State plays good defense. They could lose to Memphis in the first round. I have them squeaking one out, but not defeating Gonzaga. Gonzaga just has too much talent, scores too many points, and I think that they'll beat Boise State and move on to the Sweet 16. The next matchup in this region is a 5-4 contest between 5-seed UConn and 4-seed Arkansas. And this would be a fantastic matchup. J.D. Note and company versus a high-powered UConn offense. UConn, a team that could go deep into this tournament, certainly is capable of beating Arkansas. But I don't think that they will. If these two teams make it in the second round and match up against each other, I'm picking Arkansas 12 times out of 10. I have them moving on to the Sweet 16 as well. The next matchup in this region that I have is the Rutgers Notre Dame winner versus Texas Tech. And this is where things start to get crazy. Because I'm going with the 11 seed, the Rutgers Notre Dame winner, to upset Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is a tremendous defensive team. I think that sometimes they struggle to be consistent on offense, and I think they're susceptible for that reason. And I'm going with the 11 seed to make the Sweet 16. The next matchup is the 10 seed Davidson Wildcats and 2 seed Duke Blue Devils. And I think Davidson's a good team. I have them advancing to the second round, but Steph Curry's not walking through that door. Well, he might. He might walk through the door to watch the game, but he's not suiting up for the Wildcats. and I think Duke moves on to the Sweet 16 there. In the East bracket, I have the number one not overall, but the number 1 seed Baylor Bears versus North Carolina, and I think that Baylor is a better team. I have the Bears moving on. I just don't trust North Carolina to be consistently good back-to-back games. Then the 12 seed Wyoming Indiana winner versus UCLA, I'm going to go with the Bruins. I think the UCLA is too talented and too good, especially on the offensive end. Juzang is going to have another good tournament in my estimation. I think UCLA moves on there. In the next matchup, I have the 6 seed Texas Longhorns versus the 14 seed Yale Bulldogs. And look, I already gave Yale an upset victory as a 14 seed, and then I think their tournament comes to an end. Look, I do not believe in the Texas Longhorns. I don't think that they're that good of a basketball team. But I just so happen to like the way the matchups work out for them. And I have them beating Yale to make the Sweet 16. And then in what will be one of the best matchups in all of the second round of the NCAA tournament, the 30-2 Murray State Racers, a team from Kentucky, against the 2 seed Kentucky Wildcats. And let me tell you, Murray State is capable of winning this basketball game. Oscar Tshiebwe may not let that happen. He is an absolute behemoth in the paint. Probably National Player of the Year. He's a walking double-double. But just say that Murray State gets him in foul trouble, which they could. They take the ball to the goal. They're an aggressive team offensively. Let's say they get him in foul trouble, and Kentucky has a shooting performance like they did in the SEC tournament where they do not shoot the ball well from the outside. It's quite possible that Murray State pulls the upset. So on the one hand, Kentucky is one of the best teams out of the SEC. They have Final Four potential. They have a load of talent. John Calipari has done a great job with that team. But crazy things happen in March. And I'm going with Murray State over my own Kentucky Wildcats. Not what I hope is going to happen, mind you, but what I'm predicting as I go through this bracket for the very first time ever. So in the South bracket, I have the number 1 seed Arizona Wildcats versus TCU. I just think that Arizona has too much talent. I don't think that TCU can keep up with them on the offensive end and score enough points to win. I'm going chalk Arizona on to the Sweet 16. In the 12-4 matchup here in the second round, I have the 12-seeded UAB Blazers versus the 4-seed Illinois Fighting Illini. And this is an interesting game to me because I think that Illinois is a good team. I don't think that they're a great team. I think that they will have more talent than most teams they face, but also have a tendency to play down to their competition. I'm going with an upset. I'm going UAB Blazers into the Sweet 16 and defeating Illinois. Then in the next matchup, we have 6-seed Colorado State versus Tennessee. To me, that's still a no-brainer. Tennessee is too well coached, too disciplined, too talented. They play too good a defense. They're going to beat Colorado State, and they're going to the Sweet 16. And then you have Loyola Chicago, one of my teams, one of my squads, versus the Villanova Wildcats in a 10 versus 2 matchup. And look, Villanova, I don't really see them as a Final Four type team, but they are very good, and they have had a good season. They have a terrific coach in Jay Wright. And as much as I love Loyola Chicago, I just don't think that they can beat Villanova this season. I have Villanova moving on to the Sweet 16. In the Midwest bracket, number 1 seed Kansas versus 8 seed San Diego State. I think Kansas wins that one. This is a year where people are saying 10, 12, 15 teams could win a national title. So far, there's a whole lot of chalk, isn't there? I have Kansas winning that game. In the next game, the 5 seed Iowa Hawkeyes versus the 13 seed San Diego State Jackrabbits. And this is a toss-up for me because whether San Diego State wins or whether the Providence Friars win, I think either one of those teams have potential to beat Iowa. because Iowa falls into that category of a team that I think is a good team but not a great team, and a team that I don't quite trust. I'm very tempted to pick South Dakota State to go to the Sweet 16, which sounds ridiculous. But I'm going to go with my head, and I'm going to pick the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I picked them to move on to the Sweet 16 to match up with Kansas. In the 6 versus the 3 game in the Midwest bracket, I have LSU Tigers taking on Wisconsin, and this will be a heck of a game. These are two defensive stalwarts. LSU gives up 63.5 points a game. Wisconsin gives up 66.5. This would be a heck of a matchup. I think that Wisconsin has a chance to make some legitimate noise in this year's tournament. Greg Gard is Coach of the Year in the Big Ten. Johnny Davis is a heck of a player. Wisconsin could go far in this tournament. But LSU is an underrated team, and they've played a lot of good teams this year. They have some really good experience coming into this tournament. If they can score points, they can win. But I'm going to go with Wisconsin here. Wisconsin, a team that I never really predict to go very far. I always expect them to underperform in the tournament. They might overperform this year. I'm predicting them to go to the Sweet 16. And then in the final matchup in the Midwest bracket, the USC Trojans, a 7 seed, versus the Auburn Tigers, a 2 seed. Fun fact, when 7s and 2s match up in the second round of the NCAA tournament, the 7s have won like 8 of the last 12 or 8 of the last 13 matchups. I don't know why I know that, but that's just something that I happen to know that rattles around in my head as I try to fall asleep at night. And it gives me anxiety in this matchup. I've already confessed my love of Andy Enfield and my worries about Auburn. Isaiah Mobley is a very good basketball team, and USC happens to be one of the tallest teams in the country. They're not going to be a team that struggles to match up with Auburn on the inside, or that is overshadowed by the post players of Auburn. And I think that Auburn very easily could lose this game. I really do. I think Auburn could very easily lose this game. USC's only giving up 65.5 points a game. They're a good team. They're 1-4 against top 25 teams, but they're a good team. They went 14-6 in their conference. I'm going to go with Auburn. It might be because I just can't stomach the idea of Auburn winning 27 games in an SEC regular season title and then bowing out in the second round of the tournament after losing in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament. But I'm going to say that Bruce Pearl makes adjustments and that Auburn puts something together that they beat a very good USC team to advance to the Sweet 16. So at this point in the brackets, in the bracketology that we are doing here on In the Shed with Wes, the Sweet 16 looks like this in our mind. Arizona, UAB, Tennessee, Villanova, Kansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Auburn. So in the West, you have Gonzaga versus Arkansas, and oh my gosh, I don't care when this game is played. If this game happens, I will watch it. I would watch it at 3 a.m. on a Saturday. I would miss a day of work. Don't tell my boss to watch this basketball game because Arkansas plays such good defense. There's no question that Mark Few is one of the best basketball coaches in the country. There's no question that Gonzaga has absolute top-tier talent. But they play such a weak schedule. They lost to St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a good team, but if they played in the SEC this year or in the Big Ten, how many games would Gonzaga have lost? I think they would have lost a few. They went 26-3. Arkansas went 25-8 in the SEC. Give me the Razorbacks. Give me J.D. Note and Jalen Williams and Eric Musselman. Give me the Razorbacks to the Elite Eight, defeating Gonzaga. The other matchup in the West, I have the 11th seed, the winner of Rutgers or Notre Dame. And I'm basing this on it being Rutgers. If it's Notre Dame, I think they lose in the first round to Alabama. But I'm saying Rutgers is in the dang Sweet 16 facing Duke. And Banchero and Mike Krzyzewski and company, they win. Look, I think Duke is a top 10 or 12 team. I don't think they're one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. But they've got too much talent for either Rutgers or Notre Dame. And it's Mike Krzyzewski's final year. And I think that they probably go to the Elite Eight. I have them moving on. In the East, I have 1 seed Baylor against 4 seed UCLA. Give me the Bruins. Give me the Bruins. 2 experienced basketball teams, 2 well-coached basketball teams. But I just have a gut feeling about the Bruins. My gut has been wrong a lot when it comes to NCAA tournament. Anything can happen in March. But I just think that Baylor has experienced too many injuries. I don't think they've had enough time together. I don't think that they'll be at full strength, and I've got UCLA moving on. And then I have 6 seed Texas versus 7 seed Murray State. Give me the Racers. Give me the Racers. 30-2 on the year. Murray State moves on. They're a better basketball team than Texas all the way around, full stop. Send tweet. Hashtag Murray State. Murray State to the Elite Eight. If they can get by Kentucky, which is a heck of a prediction, I have them going to the Elite Eight. I might be by myself, but I have them going to the Elite Eight. In the South, I have number 1 seed Arizona versus UAB. That's a win for Arizona. Andy Kennedy is a good basketball coach. I hope that he stays at UAB instead of bolts this offseason for one of the SEC jobs that are open, like Georgia or LSU or Missouri. I think that UAB has a chance to make a run, but they can't match up with Arizona. They get bounced in the Sweet 16. Then I have 3 seed Tennessee against 2 seed Villanova. You already know where I'm going. Give me Tennessee. I don't know. I just have a feeling about the Volunteers. They're just playing such high-level basketball right now. They're so much better on the offensive end than they were at the beginning of the year, and they've been an elite defensive team all year long. I think that they beat Villanova. They move on to the Elite Eight. In the Midwest, Kansas versus Iowa. And I think that that would be an interesting matchup. I really do. Because both teams can really score the basketball. Kansas is ranked 8th in the BPI. Iowa is ranked 14th in the BPI. Kansas does have a winning record against top 25 teams at 6-4, whereas Iowa is 2-5 against top 25 teams. And they would be playing in Chicago, Illinois, which would be very interesting. I think Kansas moves on. I actually do not enjoy picking 1 seeds, but I just think that Kansas has too much talent in a matchup against a team like Iowa. And then the last matchup, the one that gives me great anxiety and stress, is 3 seed Wisconsin at 24-7 overall on the year against 2 seed Auburn at 27-5. Look, I already told you that Auburn is capable of losing in the second round against USC. And if Auburn plays like they did in the SEC tournament, that's exactly what will happen. But they're also a team with Final Four potential. And earlier in the year, those 3 weeks when they were ranked number 1 in the country, they were so good. Can Bruce Pearl and his coaching staff find a way to harness that again and turn back the clock? Or will Wisconsin put Auburn out of its misery? Give me my Tigers. Give me Auburn to the Elite Eight. I just can't help it. I want it to be true. War Eagle forever. So in the Shed with West bracket, the Elite Eight looks like this: Arkansas, Duke, UCLA, Murray State, Arizona, Tennessee, Kansas, and Auburn. We have 2 number 1 seeds left in the Elite Eight in my bracket. And in the West, you have Arkansas versus Duke for a chance to go to the Final Four. And I don't know. I think that Arkansas is certainly capable of being a Final Four team. And I think that their defense is electric, and I think that they have one of the most underrated players in the country, like I said, in J.D. Notae. And I think that Duke is a little overrated. I think that they at times have kind of had lapses where they just don't play up to the level of their competition. But something about it being Coach K's last year, and I'm not even a fan, okay, but something about it being his last year, I just think that they win this game, they make the Final Four. I'm going with Duke. In the East, I have the 4-seed UCLA Bruins versus the 7-seed, the Murray State Racers, which is like a snake. It's a snake, I think. I don't know. UCLA and Murray State are both feel-good teams for me in this tournament, teams that I earmarked that I thought had a chance to go a long way, and I'm going to go with UCLA. I just think they have a little bit more top-end talent. And I think that they beat Murray State in a close, high-scoring matchup, and they move on to the Final Four. In the South, you have number 1 seed Arizona versus 3 seed Tennessee. Give me the Volunteers. I'm rolling with Rick Barnes and company, and maybe I'm too swayed by how good Tennessee looked in the SEC tournament because they may not play up to that potential or at such an elite level, but I'm betting that they do. And certainly, Arizona is a capable and a very talented basketball team. But Tennessee's been through the fire this year in the SEC. And I'm going with Tennessee. And in the last matchup of the Elite Eight, I have the 1 seed Kansas Jayhawks against my 2nd seed Auburn Tigers. I can't possibly pick Auburn to upset Kansas. A blue blood like Kansas, who's a number 1 seed and make the Final Four when they looked so bad the last time they were out. I can't possibly. Kansas's guard play is going to be so much better than Auburn's. But Auburn has something Kansas does not. And that's Jabari Smith. And I'm all up in my feels at this point. I've already predicted Auburn to win 2 games that I think they could very easily lose. So why change now? Give me the Auburn Tigers in the Final Four, my babies, defeating Kansas. And look at this. I have a Final Four of Duke and UCLA and Tennessee and Auburn. No 1 seeds. A whole lot of chalk for me, but no 1 seeds in the Final Four. And between Duke and UCLA, I'm going UCLA. And what in the world am I going to do between Tennessee and Auburn? Begrudgingly, I'm going to go with the Tennessee Volunteers. And in the championship game between UCLA and Tennessee, I'm going to predict that the Tennessee Volunteers win a national championship by a score of 76-69. And there you have it. You now know how the bracket is going to shape up. You now know exactly what probably won't happen. But man, I had a lot of fun going through that bracket with you. I did. I had a lot of fun going through that bracket with you. Here's to hoping Murray State doesn't go out in the first round. Here's to hoping the Yale Bulldogs can pull off an upset. Here's to hoping Tennessee plays up to their potential and that my Auburn Tigers find the magic again so that they do not let me down. And I got to say, there are a few teams that did not make the tournament. That's always a talking point. That'll be covered thoroughly on other sports talk shows. We just wanted to go through the tournament together today. But the fact that Texas A&M did not make the tournament this year is egregious. It really is. They made the SEC tournament championship game. They beat Auburn. They are a tournament team. They played in the best conference in the country. They should be in this field of 68. That one is pretty bad. And then one of the 4 teams I gave you at the beginning of the season, my Iona Gales. They lost to Riders 71-70. They went 25-7 on the year. And I know they played in a 1-bid conference. And I know that they're not a team that you think of automatically, but They're a team I wholeheartedly believe is a tournament team. They're one of the 68 best teams in the country for sure. For sure. So last year I gave you 4 teams before the season started, and 2 of them made the Final Four. This year I gave you Iona, St. Bonaventure, Auburn, and Arkansas, and 2 of them didn't make the tournament. But the other 2 are a 2 seed and a 4 seed and have a good chance. A tough road to hoe, but a good chance to go far in this year's tournament, and I'm excited to see what happens. The games start on Tuesday night, and you'll hear this on Monday. You'll have plenty of time to pick the opposite of what I pick. But it'll be fun. March Madness is my favorite time of the year when it comes to sports. I absolutely love it. I'm going to be watching every game. Every game. It's going to be so hard not to live tweet every single game. I'm going to be at home on lunch breaks from work. At work, I'm having it up on my computer. I'm going to be immersed in college basketball, and I will love it. Who do you have winning the national championship? I have Tennessee prevailing over UCLA in my bracket of integrity. In my first look, my very first look, that's who I have. My gut tells me Tennessee over UCLA. I may go back and pick different teams or change my bracket up for the ESPN bracket challenge. I might change my mind, but in my initial look, that's what I have. What about you? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4 and let me know. My DMs are open, my babies. My email is open, my tools. Who do you have winning the whole dang thing? And who do you think was left out that shouldn't have been? Who was overseeded? What's going to happen in Coach K's final year? How far will Duke go? And do you agree with my optimistic outlook on an Auburn Tigers team that really seems to be struggling? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. I would love to connect with you. I love March Madness. And that's all for the world of sports. That's all for the world of sports. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of the paranormal. And for our first story in the world of the paranormal, we go to L.A. Courteney Cox revealed what was the final straw before she was convinced to sell her haunted L.A. home. Courteney Cox wasn't a believer in ghosts until she moved into a haunted house. The Shining Veil star recently explained that after moving into a new house in L.A., she wasn't too concerned about the home's history even when spooky things began happening. I didn't believe at first, but I lived in this house in Laurel Canyon, which is in L.A., obviously, and it was Gypsy Rose Lee's house and Carole King, Courteney explained on Jimmy Kimmel Live. She said that at one point after moving in, Carole stopped by to tell her what had happened when the house belonged to her prior to her purchase. She said that there had been a divorce that was really ugly, and there was a ghost in the house. And I was like, yeah, whatever, okay, Courteney said. She continued, but other people who would stay there with me, like friends of mine, said that they felt an encounter with a woman who was sitting on the edge of the bed. While she tried to not let it bother her, she ended up holding a seance at the home with Carole. That was your mistake number 1, Monica. Ultimately, the seance didn't quite work, and Courteney had one final ghostly encounter that changed her mind and drove her to sell the home. I was at the house one day not being a believer. The doorbell rang. It was a UPS guy or something, and I opened the door, and he said, "Do you know this house is haunted?" Courteney shared. She went on, and I go, "Yeah, why? Why do you think that?" And he says, "Because there's someone standing behind you." And I was like, okay, time to sell. Because of the UPS man, she out here selling her house. It must be nice to be rich. You just be like on a whim, just like, hey, UPS man said my house was haunted, I'm out of here. I just have the option to sell my house whenever I feel like it. After that incident, Courteney couldn't sleep in the house alone anymore and put it on the market. And that's the story of Monica Geller's haunted house in L.A. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Anytime one of these celebrities has stories about their house being haunted, And it always seems to be on Jimmy Kimmel where they share it too. I don't know why he's the one that they go to with these stories. Maybe he's just more interested in them. But to me, she really messed up when she held the seance. Because if you're already having problems with a purported haunting, why in the world is the answer to communicate with the dead? Like, hey, I'm having some issues with this one thing, so I'm going to really lean into it and start messing with it. And start opening up all sorts of doors and portals and opportunities that I'm completely inexperienced and unaware of. Probably not the best idea, Courteney Cox. Probably not the best idea. What do you think? How would you handle that if you moved into a house that very clearly was haunted, that was scary to you? Could you live in a haunted house? Would you sell the house? What would you do to handle it? What options would be on the table for you? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Let us know. Our next story in the world of the paranormal takes us to the ocean. Yeah. Octopuses have learned to make use of ocean litter, study finds. Whether it's mimicking venomous creatures or shooting jets of water at aquarium light switches to turn them off. Say what? I knew octopuses was crazy smart, but just that first sentence, shooting jets of water at aquarium light switches to turn them off. That is astounding. Octopuses are nothing if not resourceful. Now, an analysis of underwater images suggests that octopuses are increasingly using discarded bottles, cans, and other human rubbish as shelter or as a sanctuary for their eggs. The study, the first to systematically evaluate and characterize litter use by octopuses. What a study. What a thing to study. What a thing to get paid to do. What is your job? You're out on a date. We're going back to this same example. Imagine that you were out on a date for the very first time, and the person sitting across from you says, so what do you do for a living? Well, I get paid to systematically evaluate and characterize litter use by octopuses. That's a dream job. #goals. Analyzed hundreds of underwater photos posted on social media platforms and image databases or collected by marine biologists and diving interest groups. The research published in Marine Pollution Bulletin documented 24 species of octopus sheltering inside glass bottles, cans, and even an old battery, burying themselves under a mixture of bottle tops and seashells, even carrying plastic items around while stilt walking on two tentacles to conceal themselves from predators. This is so very interesting, but also very sad at all of the litter that is in the ocean anyway. It just kind of breaks my heart for these octopuses there. Yeah. The deep sea records were extremely interesting because even at great depths, these animals are interacting with litter, said Mayra Proedi of the Federal University of Rio Grande in Brazil, who supervised the research. They clearly see that there's a lot of litter around, and it can therefore act as a kind of article camouflage. It shows their extreme ability to adapt. They're very intelligent animals, and they'll use whatever they have at their disposal to continue sheltering or walking around with protection. The octopuses seem to show a preference for unbroken items, as well as darker or opaque containers, and the most common interaction recorded was using rubbish as shelter. Proedi said, while these interactions could seem positive for the animals because they're lacking natural shelters such as seashells, sold by the seashore, it's not a good thing to think that the animals may be using litter as shelter because the seashells are gone. Sheltering or laying eggs inside discarded tires, batteries, or plastic objects could also expose octopuses to heavy metals and other harmful chemicals, she said. So, octopuses, which is the correct term, it is not octopi. We've been over this before. You would think that it is octopi. It's actually octopuses. They are so intelligent that they have now adapted to using the trash that we have filled and littered our oceans with resourcefully as shelter, ways to camouflage, or a safe place to lay their eggs. Wow. If you've been with the show for a while, you know that the reason why we shared this news story in the paranormal news is because nobody covers octopuses the way that we do. Okay. If you need octopus news, you come to In the Shed with Wes Anderson. You will find no better place to learn about the octopus than in my shed at like midnight in Alabama. Our interest with octopus started when we covered a story in the paranormal news on an episode about whether or not octopuses were aliens, because they're so bizarre and they're so intelligent and they can do so much that some people say, hey, maybe they're from another planet. And I'm team alien octopus. Make no mistake. Those things are not from this world, okay? But that started our octopus coverage. Since then, we have covered how female octopuses throw things at males who come onto them. We have covered octopus that was eating sharks in an aquarium. And now we cover how octopuses have adapted to using the things that we have littered the ocean with because they are superiorly intelligent and resourceful and very clearly aliens. From the ocean, we go to Japan for our next story. Haunting mermaid mummy in Japan is probably a gruesome monkey-fish mix. The 300-year-old mummy likely consists of a monkey's torso sewed onto the bottom half of a fish. Researchers in Japan are investigating the origins of a nightmarish 300-year-old mummified mermaid, which has been worshipped for centuries due to its supposed medicinal properties. Worshipped for centuries because of its supposed medicinal properties? That's interesting to me because I don't be out here worshiping things for their medicinal properties. I'm not like, hey, let me bow before you, Tylenol. But that's fine. To each their own. I digress. The haunting remains are most likely a gruesome combination of a monkey's torso sewed onto a fish's tail, potentially embellished with hair and nails from a human. Ew. Hiroshi Kanoshita, board member of the Okayama Folklore Society, discovered the mermaid mummy, which is around 12 inches long, inside a box at a temple in Okayama Prefecture. He first became aware of the mummy after he found a picture of the bizarre specimen in an encyclopedia of mythical creatures. A fisherman supposedly caught the specimen sometime between 1736 and 1741. That's very precise. And he subsequently sold it to an affluent family according to a note left inside the mummy's box. That was nice of the person to write a note. Researchers still don't know exactly how the mermaid ended up inside the temple, according to a Japan news site, the Asahi Shinbun. The Asahi Shimbun. I said Shinbum. It is not the Shinbum. It is the Shimbun. Big difference there. Now, Takafumi Kato, a paleontologist at the Kurashiki University of Science and the Arts, and colleagues have begun looking into the mummy's origins after Kinoshita convinced the temple to let the scientists investigate the unusual remains. On February 2nd, the scientists imaged the mummy using a CT scan, as seen in a video that can be found online. Researchers will also take a DNA sample to identify which species have been combined to make the mermaid. The team will release their results later in the year, they have said. So, there might be a 300-year-old mummy in Japan. Hopefully most of the people that have spent time worshiping this creature are no longer with us. Because I cannot imagine their disappointment, but hey, just looking at a picture of it, it's clearly a monkey body with a fish tail sewn onto it, okay? This is like a Fiji mermaid right here. And look, we have covered mermaids on the show before. Do you remember, if you listened to the show for a while, we had a lady that emailed like 2 or 3 times into the show specifically requesting that we do an episode about mermaids. And hey, we give the people what they want. If you guys want mermaids, then hey, we talking mermaids. And we did. And I think that this is a thing that is possible. This theory, this aquatic ape theory, that there is some humanoid type creature, something that resembles people more so than a fish does, that still lives in the ocean but that's in small numbers, or that used to exist but has evolved differently. I think that that's a possibility, okay? This thing is not that. This thing is a monkey body with a fish tail. And I can't wait for that DNA result to come back, and it's going to be like, hey, you worshipped a monkey body with a fish tail. But it's okay. And if they want to keep worshiping it over there, you know, you do you, Japan. I don't have any listeners from Japan. Maybe I'll get some after this. Shout out to India. Put me on a billboard in India. I want to be on a billboard in India. I am contractually obligated to say that phrase. India now makes up like 34% of our listening audience. It's absolutely insane. But I love it. And I love you, India. And that is definitely not a mermaid. For our final story in the world of the paranormal, we go to Africa. Tsavo man-eaters, the serial killer lions of African legend. We all know that humans can be serial killers, but there was a documented case in Tsavo, East Africa in the late 1800s which tells of 2 man-eating lions leaving a deadly path of human carnage in their wake. Some say although the lions made meals of most of their victims, they might have hunted for sport because humans don't fit into their normal dietary needs, which call for higher amounts of protein and larger bones. The story was the basis of a movie starring Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer called The Ghost and the Darkness, which itself took artistic liberty with the written, terrifying eyewitness accounts by Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson in his book The Man-Eaters of Tsavo. And I don't know when that movie came out. It is clearly an older movie, but I want to watch it. I want to find a way to watch it because I watched the trailer and it looks like fun. Have you ever heard of that movie? Have you seen it? Do you recommend it to me? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com and let me know. Patterson, an engineer, was commissioned in 1898 to oversee the construction of a bridge that would span over the Tsavo River for the British Railroad. But his mission was delayed several times by 2 male lions that had developed an odd taste for his staff. Terrifying. Several thousand workers were employed by Patterson to build the bridge. They lived in an expansive makeshift town consisting of tents and structures which offered very little protection against the harsh savanna ecosystem. The rogue lions were part of this biotic community. Unlike their well-known Serengeti counterparts, Tsavo males can be identified by their maneless heads, a detail missing from the movie. It wasn't long before Patterson settled into his new surroundings when these bold felines began to attack his men. They would prowl around the encampment, taking turns pulling men from their tents and ripping them apart from limb to limb. This went on for a while until the cat stopped showing up, only to return with a vengeance a few months later. That's absolutely terrifying, to think of the fact that you are camping in a makeshift town to build a bridge for a railroad, and these 2 rogue lions keep coming back night after night, prowling around the outside of your encampment. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've been in the woods or the mountains or the wilderness and have heard a large animal moving around close to where you are. But there are few things as terrifying as that feeling of utter helplessness that, hey, if this thing comes for me, there is nothing I can do but meet my maker. terrifying. Upon their return, they increased their murderous rampage. The cats successfully traversed any traps, scare tactics, or barbed fencing the men could come up with. What's more, the cats were working in tandem now. Yo. Scared for their lives, construction workers abandoned the project. I bet they did, bringing production to a standstill. Completely overwhelmed and sorely behind schedule, British officials were determined to get rid of these man-eating pests. Enter about 20 Indian armed soldiers who did nothing but agitate the cats even further. It was Patterson they wanted, and in their pursuit of him managed to avoid the hired guns. Which begs the question, can animals hold a personal vendetta? And if you have cats, you know the answer to this question is yes. Yes, they can. These two did, according to Patterson. They had become angered at his constant meddling and gunfire. In defiance, he managed to shoot one cat in the leg. It ran off, but despite its wound, returned with a thirst for Patterson's blood. It was man versus beast until Patterson got the upper hand, took aim, and struck the lion in the heart with a bullet, killing it. The beast was over 9 feet long and required the help of several men to carry it away. The second lion met with the deadly end of Patterson's rifle, but like its brother, also managed to survive, fleeing into the savannah wounded and angry. 11 days later, Patterson found it and shot it 6 more times, finally fatally shooting it in the head. Patterson said the cat, even while dying, pawed at a tree branch trying to reach him before taking his final breath. In all, the cats managed to kill 135 people, although scientists argue that the number is hyperbolic and lies somewhere in the dozens. I'm sorry, but that is not better. Yes, 135 is a giant number. But in the dozens implies that at a bare minimum, these two lions killed 24 human beings, which means that they came back and that they did this time after time after time, that they were on a killing spree. And that is terrifying. The two cats actually had help from a third, but it was killed before Patterson's arrival and therefore undocumented. The giant pelts of Patterson's spoils would become his household throw rugs for many years before they were sold to the Field Museum in Chicago for $5,000. Curators eventually stuffed them to make lifelike dioramas. As for why the big cats would hunt human flesh, one Tsavo cat researcher, Bruce Patterson, said in an interview, they might have done so because we are slower, weaker, and more defenseless. You can read James Henry Patterson's full account in his book, The Man-Eaters of Tsavo, which is now been added to my reading list. The Man-Eaters of Tsavo is a book that I will be buying and reading. And maybe, if you're lucky, maybe I'll let you know how it is. I thought this was an incredible story and was certainly worth sharing with you. The Man-Eaters of Tsavo, serial killer lions. And the thing that I thought was so interesting was that they were apparently hunting for sport. And it was 2 male lions. Usually it's the women that do the hunting. I don't know where the rest of the pride was. If they were separated from their pride, if the rest of their pride had died. But these 2 brother lions were coming at nighttime and were just decimating and torturing and maiming and killing this group of British folks who had shown up to build bridges and railroads. Yo, that's crazy. That's crazy. And when it comes to wildlife, you always hear things like, well, they're more scared of you than you are of them. And, you know, people are the apex predator. And no, a lion is an apex predator. And these lions in Tsavo, they did not care if these men had them outnumbered or if they had guns. They were on the hunt. And I cannot imagine what it must have been like to be in one of those tents at night and to hear those large cats pacing outside, and to hope that that night was not your night, that they would not pick your tent, and to know that if they did, there was so little you could do about it. The man-eaters of Tsavo. Wow. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 36. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk some sports, and take a look at the Ariel School UFO incident. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling week. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!